Greetings everyone, I'm DonTheCrown, and today I want to talk to you about the upcoming patch 3.11 Harvest League. And to start off, let's get the question that I'm probably sure a lot of you want to know is Melee dead? And the answer is no. Not at all. Not even close. For the most part, I see a lot of people freaking out because there's a lot of changes that are coming to Melee. Overall, like crit multi has been scaled back. I know a lot of people are commenting about like the changes to some uniques, but in terms of like my classic Berserker League starter, he's looking just fine right over here, and this was like League starter levels of gear, and I'll probably be making a short video about this soon enough, but for the most part, not very much to worry about. We're going to be totally fine, and I actually will probably still start off Berserker. I've kind of considered starting off with slams, but kind of need to do a little bit more POB work to see how that works. But for the most part, you know, definitely going to be still playing Melee. A lot of things that people are really stressed out about are going to be totally fine. And one thing I just kind of like start off with is that this is definitely a league where there's going to be a lot of changes, a lot of stir up with how people play Melee, and generally that's going to lead to a lot of new mechanics coming to light, new builds coming to light. And this is not the first time this has happened. It's not going to be the last time this happens. And in general, this is somewhat of a good thing. Even though there might be a build that you really, really love and adore, and you might see things that are getting nerfed or removed or changed, and that might be really, really bad. For the most part, I've always had fun with Path of Exile, and I always had fun finding out new builds and retweaking things. And even if I had like just found a build that I really love to play, I find another build that's really enjoyable to play. And in fact, the process of like seeking out that new build and finally finding it is like some of the most fun. But one of the things I see a lot of people talking about are some of the changes to the unique two-handed weapons. And in specific, there's a whole bunch of these that have been buffed and nerfed. But let's take a look at the kind of chart for this. So you can kind of see it way over there on the left, the name of the unique and whether or not it's been buffed or nerfed. And you'll see stuff like Azira's Disfavor, Disintegrator, Hegemonies have all been nerfed. To me, this doesn't necessarily make a lot of sense. I don't really feel like any of those were incredibly overpowered in terms of uniques. And things like Azira's has like long been like an end game unique type of item, and so it's seeing like a tiny bit of nerf. Like you notice it's 653.9 to 653.7. I don't really know if that feels super duper justified, because Azira's Disfavor wasn't flying off the shelf even when Melee was very, very popular and not so very strong. Maybe it'll be even better now with some of the changes to two-handers, but overall, The real big loser of this particular league, though, is going to be Starforge. As you can see here, it went from 733.5 on the very highest top end to 596.8. So yeah, Starforge is basically not even going to be worth it, right? Normally I see a lot of people spending like 7 to 8 exalts on this weapon early on in the league. And I always thought it's pretty silly because there might be some other two-hander swords out there that perform just as well or better in a lot of situations. And those might have actually gotten buffed. So I have a pretty strong idea about what unique two-handed weapon I'm going to be starting off the league with. However, we have to keep in mind that there are a lot of upcoming changes to crafting, and these changes to crafting are going to allow you to basically create new and better weapons with maybe some even new mods. We're not really sure about that, or to rework some of the existing mods in new ways, because like historically when you like slam Warlord Exalt into a good 2 prefix, you're like praying to hit the right thing, and if you don't, it's kind of dead, right? But now there will be harvest crafting options, which will allow you to remove a influence mod and then add a new one, which will be the same type of influence. So you can kind of keep rolling the dice on some of these items. You can like keep tweaking your items to make it better. And that's really huge for melee. I'm going to be keeping my eyes open for physical crafts as I level up. And then when I find them, I'm going to plant them, keep on running, obviously, and then use them when it's time to upgrade the next weapon. Normally, you end up taking a little bit of time doing this anyways in town. I don't see why you wouldn't necessarily be able to do this while harvesting. Will it be the fastest possible way to level up? Probably not, but it'll be very fun, I think. And there'll be just a big difference. For me, I've always like thought that like, wow, if I get a contempt essence and I slap that on a weapon and I also get a fizz modifier, it is like game changing. That weapon like carries me for 10, 15 levels sometimes. And so being able to almost basically get that every time is going to be really stinking nice while you're leveling up. So I would highly keep your eyes open for that. Basically, you'll be able to tell what the upcoming seeds are going to give you because you can just look at them. So, for example, if we go to the preview here, let me zoom in on this a little bit. You can see here that this is like a primal feasting horror grain, and at the bottom there it says reveals a random physical modifier crafting effect when harvested. And so that can be things like pretty much a physical only exalted orb, which is insane. Now I know a lot of people are going to be like, but Don, how common, wrong button. How common are those going to be when we are actually leveling up? And Chris Wilson has even said that they're going to be very common while you're leveling, but then they're going to go away not so much when you're in endgame maps because there'll be more options. And as they level up, they become more powerful because you'll be able to get higher tier mods, think kind of like essences. And so that's going to be really, really good for melee. Now, there have been some nerfs. Like, I don't necessarily want to go over the entirety of all of the patch notes. I'm sure that there are probably hundreds of videos out there right now that are like reading through and talking about all of these. If you're really interested in getting my live take, I guess I could put a link to the VOD to my Twitch stream down below in the comments. But if you're not familiar with the changes, there's just a lot of stuff. They pretty much are reworking War-cries. They've added a whole bunch of new War-cries. They've changed some of the old ones. They have added a new class of melee attack called Slam. And Slam basically, its whole kind of identity is this big, slow, two-handy type of hit. You don't necessarily think you have to do two-handy, but that's what that is. War-cries also do something called exert your attacks, and basically what that does is makes it so your next couple of hits, some of them are 2, some of them are 8, they do an additional effect, and some of those are basically gives you Ancestral Call for a few hits. Some of them make it so that you do a lot of damage and stun. Some of them make it so you guarantee deal double damage for like the next 2 hits. These can be pretty cool, pretty interesting. Different changes. And historically, we've seen, like, if I go look at my POB again, we're attacking extremely fast with things like Cyclone, which, by the way, did get nerfed. You can get stunned now where you're cycloning, but that's the only change. So damage is the same, maneuverability is the same, speed is the same. You're just going to get stunned occasionally, which does suck. So maybe you want to find some other way to not get stunned, or just get a lot of life so that you don't really get stunned for that long. But for the most part, should be fine. And so since we're not going to be playing builds like Cyclone, you can, with big, slow earthquake hits, that might come back into the meta. I remember way back when, in like Perandus League, when Marori Urki Earthquake Jug was really, really popular, but it kind of fell back and back and back in terms of the DPS. I would love to see something like this come back. Now, don't get me wrong, I don't think Juggernaut has the damage to make it work, and it just doesn't really have a lot of damage, but maybe it does. Who knows? We're going to find out. Pretty much my goal of this league is to play a whole wide range of builds as opposed to just tunneling in on 2 or 3. And I'll be doing a kind of a build crawl across all the new stuff, and every like 2 to 3 weeks we're going to be checking out a new build, and should be pretty great. But other things that are in the kind of patch notes, if you haven't read them, besides like the new skills, brands have changed. They're definitely not going to be dragged around the entire map with brand recall anymore. That doesn't give you any additional cooldown. So I'd highly look into that if you are a brand player. There's a whole bunch of changes to some skills. Some of them have added damage effectiveness. Some of them no longer have added flat physical damage, but have been compensated by having higher percentage physical damage. Now, I was a little bit surprised by Ground Slam in particular here. I have not leveled up with Ground Slam since maybe Pirandus League. Years, basically. Very long time. And so when I went to do a leveling run with Ground Slam, with Marauder, and then basically absolutely destroyed Brutus because I dropped my war banner, had my totem down, and then just smack, 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 and he died, I was a little bit surprised. So knowing that these are going to be getting buffed very much interests me. So I might be trying to level up with Ground Slam. I might be trying to level up with Perforate, which has also gotten quite a noticeable buff. If you haven't read through the Perforate changes, here we are. Basically, you're now going to get 1 more spike at all times, 2 additional spikes if you have recently changed stances. So that's like the last 4 seconds. That's a long period of time. You do a little bit less damage in Blood Stance. However, they've said that you hit with more spikes, which probably means that in Blood Stance you're doing a lot more damage than you were before. In Metamorph League, I actually went all the way to 600 depth, which is no big deal, on my Berserker, and was just killing everything with Perforate. It was so great, attacking super duper fast, spikes clearing out the entire screen, and now you can pretty much have that effect going on all the time with additional spikes. And the single target on that was absolutely dumb. Just switch to Blood Stance and just murder bosses, and so that's going to be even more amped up. So very, very excited about that. Those are 2 skills that I think are probably a little bit sleeper. Earthquake, obviously, super duper popular. It's going to be definitely used by a lot of people. And then some other skills like Static Strike, for example, kind of seemingly got nerfs to their general layout. Like this basically has a base duration of 2 seconds now as opposed to 4. Which to me, like Static Strike, I'm not really sure was ever popular. And so it's kind of strange to see it get nerfed. There's a ton of passive tree balance as well. Like so many changes to the passive tree. And one of the big ones that does kind of affect melee is basically every single node that has reduced damage on it is gone now. And especially reduced physical damage. So if we, for example, look here, Soul of Steel no longer has the reduced physical damage. The Brinksmanship, for example, no longer has reduced area damage. That's a pretty big deal. And losing these types of damage mitigating factors, oh yeah, and Vol Molten Shell got absolutely hammered, is going to lead to a lot of uncertainty when it comes to defensive layers and builds, because you're just going to be taking more damage. So things like Champion are going to be incredibly tanky, especially because of like Conqueror, for example. Kind of like how it works with Herald of Purity. If you don't know, basically with Conqueror, enemies taunted by you deal less damage with hits and ailments against other targets, and you have a 100% chance to taunt. And taunt by itself, if a target taunts something else, that something else does less damage to anything else besides the taunted thing. And it seems to kind of overlap. And so if you have Herald of Purity hitting things and they taunt, then they do whatever they're taunting does less damage to you. So that is pretty nice. I think Champion is going to be really shining out right now in terms of being a Ascendancy that does great damage and is very, very tanky. Gladiator will also be shining out because Challenger charges and Bleed Explosions gives you a lot of speed. I'm not really sure if the blocky defensive side of that type of Ascendancy is going to be very good, because Glancing Blows is now on the Ascendancy tree, or on the passive tree, and so you can pretty much double your block very, very easily, even if they only take half the damage off. That's like another way to kind of get that mechanic in there, and you don't necessarily need to go Gladiator anymore. Slayer is not really in a great spot right now. Overwhelm is basically the only really great thing that's going for it, and then Bane of Legends and Brutal Fervor have kind of fallen way behind the times. Juggernaut, I don't believe, is getting any changes this league, which is a little bit disheartening. But I wouldn't be surprised to see a whole bunch of EQ jugs coming out of the woodworks. But I wouldn't also be surprised to see a lot of those builds just kind of being re-rolled and not working all that well. Juggernaut kind of feels not that great, I think. Berserker basically is 100% the same, with the exception that Warbringer is now completely reworked and is kind of bad. Really, really bad. And so you generate 5 rage per 5 power whenever you War-cry. And so, for example, power is based off of the things that you hit most of the time. So a lot of War-cries will count normal monsters as 1, magical monsters as 2, rares as 5, and then I think, I actually might be wrong. Normals. Yeah, but anyways, so basically this gives you rage per power when you War-cry. I think bosses are giving you 20 power. So they give you like maximize your rage very quickly against a boss. But then if you War-cry again, if you're above 25 rage, then you lose half your rage. So that's definitely a little bit of anti-synergy with the rest of the tree. Now, your exerted attacks will deal 50% more damage if a War-cry sacrificed rage. So this could actually maybe be good. I'm going to be trying it out, but this is definitely very strange because Rite of Ruin, for example, requires that you have 25 rage to not be stunned. So it's very, very strange. And of course, something that's not like obvious here is that exerted attacks can't be attacks that are channeled or repeated. So no Cyclone, no Multi-Strike, which is kind of strange. Now, if you're wondering about Rage, there's also like a new change to the Berserking on the tree, and it's going to give you plus 10 to maximum Rage, which could be really good. It's kind of unfortunate though, because Berserking used to be one of the best attack speed nodes on the tree. It now gives 3/3, and both of these are you lose rage slower. Does this count with Berserking? We don't know. If this counts with Berserk, these 2 nodes plus a Helm enchant means that you're going to be Berserking for a long time. That would be amazing, but we don't know how it's going to be. And now, basically, Lesser Carnage is the best attack speed node, I think, on the tree. And it's not in a good spot as Berserking was. It's a little bit sad. Besides that, Chieftain has been slightly changed. You'll notice that Tahoa Forest Strength is like kind of not up here with Valico Storm's Embrace. Valico is going to give you 15% more damage if you've lost an endurance charge in the last 8 seconds. So that means like if you're doing Tectonic Slam, if you are having Immortal Call proc off, those are both going to activate this more damage. Now, Tahoa Forest Strength is actually kind of cool because you'll trigger Tahoa's Chosen whenever you attack with a slam skill near an enemy. And so what this means is, and unfortunately right now, Leap Slam is a slam. What this means is that you'll pretty much have a second guy come out and do your same slam. This has a 2-second cooldown though, so don't think of it as a like 100% more damage modifier. And from what I understand, they're actually going to be adding a small node right here, and it's going to make it so that travel skills cannot exert your attacks, but I don't think that's going to work with that. And so the exert that we kind of get from doing War-cries is going to kind of be counteracted by just leap slamming anywhere. So this might be a league where we're seeing a lot of dash. Right now, I'm not really sure what they plan to do with that. There is a new keystone on the tree as well, the Impaler, which I'm not really sure is any good, but this pretty much makes it so your hits impale enemies, also impale other enemies near them, and you inflict 4 additional impales on enemy when you impale them, and enemies cannot be impaled for 4 seconds after you impale them. So this seems like this could be okay if the second and the third line were retweaked a little bit. The problem with this is if you leap slam into a pack and hit anything and impale them, everything around it is now impaled with your teeny tiny leap slam impale, and you're not going to get your actual attacks impale, which is kind of terrible. Now, if they retweak this so that it says inflict 4 additional impales on enemies that are not afflicted by impale, and or maybe just like your travel skills cannot inflict impale, because who honestly is doing a leap slam build? Nobody, right? And that's just kind of frustrating. Now, last but not least, one thing I kind of noticed over here is Harpooner, which is a new Impale node. This section over here has been moved over here, so Forceful Skewering, while still on the tree, has been relocated up here, and the new node here, Harpooner, is for 2-handers in Impale. Now, when I first saw this, the second line, increased effective impales you inflict with 2-handed weapons, I was like, yes! But then it's like on non-impaled enemies. So this only really counts for the first impale or for the impaler. And so that could be okay there, like a nice little synergy, but for the most part, probably going to be skipping the Harpooner node, probably going to be skipping the Impaler node for now, but there's lots of other really neat things. I highly recommend you kind of take some time and look through these and see stuff. Even some nodes like this, for example, Versatile Stance. This has damage and area, depending on what stance you're in, cooldown recovery speed for stance skills, and then attack speed if you've changed stances recently, and then damage and area depending on which stance you're in. And I've seen a lot of people be like, this is the worst notable I've ever seen, but this is actually pretty nice for Perforate. You can get damage when you want it, AoE when you want it, and then attack speed if you've changed stances. And with the improvements to Perforate's targeting with Blood Stance, I would hope that would mean that, like, oh, there's a tanky rare, switch to Blood Stance, get more damage, get more attack speed, kill it. Alright, switch back to Sand Stance, leap slamming away faster than you were before, killing. Oh, here's something tanky again, switch to Blood Stance, kill, switch back to Sand Stance, and it just like makes it feel a lot smoother and a lot faster. And then if you don't even have any like form of Blood or Sand Stance, this still is like a damage node, but probably not all that great. Perforate also is getting that benefit where whenever you change stances, you are also getting more spikes. So pretty decent. A lot of the leech nodes have also been changed so that it's going to be a little bit easier for you to cap your leech. But for the most part, traditional melee builds that like doesn't have any effect on them, that pretty much just makes it so that slow slams are going to have an easier time with that. Besides that, there's like a bunch of keystones that are coming from the Timeless Cluster Jewels that you'll see scattered all around the tree, and some of these are pretty good, and you might be something you consider in your build. One that's been a little bit confusing for a lot of people is Imbalanced Guard. Now, when I first read this, I was completely confused about the wording where it says maximum damage reduction for any damage type is 50. No, this does not count elemental damage resistance. That's completely different according to GGG. But basically what this does is when you get hit, your armor counts for double, basically. And that can be pretty nice. I think around like 15 to 20,000, 15 to 20,000 armor is kind of like the sweet spot here, which means that like that you're getting a lot of benefit out of that. Now, with the loss of physical damage reduction over here and just damage reduction in general, one of the things I would highly recommend you stay away from right now is Abyssus. I know Abyssus is really, really popular. Crit multi's pretty much been nerfed all over the tree, so there'll probably be a lot of builds out there slapping the Abyssus on, trying to get additional damage, and you're going to get punished a lot more. You're going to probably get more damage relatively on your tree because of Abyssus, but you're also going to be taking a lot more damage because the physical damage you're taking is now like not being reduced by as many sources. So I probably wouldn't recommend that unless you're doing something very, very tanky that needs damage, like good old Juggernaut, right? But in terms of everything, I'm like very excited. I'm very excited to be checking out the new league, the new crafting things, checking out new builds. Honestly, even if slams are incredibly terrible, I'm going to try to make them work, and I'm definitely going to kill Uber Elder, Cirrus, everything with it, no problem, and it's gonna be really good. I honestly think that even my league starter might be a little bit nicer than it was before in the past, but that's mostly because with Harvest, I think crafting and getting those like first set of rares are gonna be a lot easier. For example, like one of the crafts is that you can add a specific elemental type to an item. And so filling out your resistances is going to be a little bit easier when you're not necessarily 100% relying on crafts. And as we know, like typically with like a Cyclone build or a lot of melee builds where you want to do the minus mana cost on your rings and amulets, they can be kind of a pain then to get a lot of resistances and life. Well, this will kind of allow you to slap on elemental resistance. We've seen that catalysts are a lot more common with Delirium around. Hopefully that will kind of stay the same this league. So having prismatic catalysts will definitely be on the table. And I'm definitely very interested in it. I'm going to be probably league starting off with Ground Slam or Perforate, Two-Hander, and maybe switching to Blade Storm, maybe switching to Earth Shatter, maybe, who knows, checking out Ground Slam the entire way. It'll be really, really fun. I'm going to be very flexible with how I play and trying to do a little bit of harvest crafting along the way, but not too much. But let me know what your thoughts on the patch notes, what your thoughts are on the changes, and if you're like super despairing and don't know what to do, and don't worry, man. Path of Exile has had some big sweeping nerfs, and I don't really feel like this is one of the big nerf bats. This is just like a little bit of a tweak, a little bit of a change. They're bringing dual wield down a little bit, pushing two-handers up, and hopefully we can get a new archetype out of this, and hopefully we can find some way to make it so that big, slow, hitty attacks feel great again. But see you guys in next time, and if you guys, as always, come by the stream, twitch.tv/DonTheCrown. See you next time.